So today, we're diving into a pretty provocative dating guide that basically throws out all the modern advice you've ever heard. It's pitched as a kind of field manual for picking a partner, and it's all built on one core idea: how to avoid divorce and, well, like the title says, get married only once.
And that quote right there, that really sets the stage. This is the problem the source material is trying to solve. The author's whole belief is that the crazy high divorce rate, it's not just bad luck. Nope. It's the result of bad partner selection, which is fueled by some seriously flawed advice.
So the guide's first move is to just completely dismantle what it calls the great deception. All the typical advice like find someone nice or make sure you have common hobbies. This book argues that all that stuff focuses on surface-level comfort, not real, lasting compatibility. Because according to this framework, attraction isn't polite or democratic, it's biological. And for real passion, you need opposite charges.
So here's how we're going to break this all down. First, we'll hit the core concept, the polarity principle. Then we'll get into the nitty-gritty of how to spot masculine and feminine energy. After that, we'll look at some universal red flags, and we'll wrap up with how to decode a potential partner's past.
All right, let's jump in. First up, the polarity principle. You gotta get this, because it's the foundation for literally everything else in this guide.
At its heart, the principle is simple. It says that for attraction to last, you need a pretty big energy gap between partners. You really have to think of it like magnets. Opposite energies pull together, hard. But similar energies, like two masculine or two feminine energies, they eventually just push apart. And that leads to that dreaded roommate vibe, or, a total breakdown of the relationship.
And get this. The guide actually tries to put a number on it. It lays out a scale from 0, which is purely feminine, to 10, purely masculine. And it says for a stable, passionate relationship, you need an energy gap of at least 3 points. Anything less, and that magnetic pull just gets weaker and weaker. The bigger the gap, the stronger the attraction.
Okay, so how are you supposed to spot these energies out in the wild? Let's start with the field guide for detecting masculine energy.
Now this brings us to a really surprising, kind of weird rule. A man shouldn't have a posed smile in his profile pictures. The logic here is that a say cheese smile is what the book calls honor-seeking. It's a subconscious plea for your approval. What you really want to see is a genuine, candid laugh. That shows joy flowing outward, not a need for validation coming inward. And the telltale sign? It's all in the eyes. If they crinkle, that's a green light. If the eyes are wide and posed, that's a red flag.
Next up, something called the beard barometer. Now in this system, facial hair isn't just a style choice, it's a signal of self-permission. A totally clean-shaven face is seen as kind of clinging to boyhood, but a short-groomed beard, that apparently hits the sweet spot. It signals maturity, self-trust. So the point isn't really the beard itself, but the confident decision-making behind it.
And finally, the guide says you just have to listen. A man's voice is seen as a direct window into his inner state. A grounded, masculine energy supposedly comes through in a deeper, measured voice, one that's warm and resonates from the chest. On the other hand, a higher-pitched or kind of strained voice gets flagged as a sign of inner anxiety.
Okay, so now let's flip the script. Time to look at the field guide for men, which is all about detecting feminine energy.
And here is where that whole polarity thing really starts to click. Remember how a man's posed smile was a red flag? Well, for a woman, a genuine smile is the ultimate green light. In this framework, it signals receptivity, openness, a sign that she feels safe and secure. It's the direct energetic opposite of that male honor seeker.
Then the guide gives men something called a parent test. And it makes a pretty bold claim that a woman's relationship with her father is a direct preview of her future with a husband. So if she shows her dad warmth and respect, she's probably going to do the same for her partner. But if that relationship is full of hostility, the guide basically warns, hey, you're next in line for that.
Okay, let's move on to the red flags that apply to everybody. These are the universal warning signs of instability. Now, the guide singles out one specific behavior as the absolute loudest warning sign of them all. It even calls it the #1 predictor of divorce. Any guesses what it might be?
It's called the disproportionate reaction. This is any emotional outburst that is just wildly out of sync with whatever triggered it. The guide calls it emotional math gone wrong and says it's a direct window into someone's hidden instability.
So it's not about the small trigger, slow Wi-Fi, a parking ticket, a little harmless tease. It's about the massive, uncontrolled reaction that comes next. This isn't just having a bad day. It's seen as a major sign of low distress tolerance, and this guide calls that an absolute deal breaker.
So what are you supposed to do about it? The guide has a super strict two-strike policy. The first time it happens, that's a warning. Everybody gets one. But the second time it happens, that's a pattern. And the advice at that point is simple. Walk away. End it. No exceptions.
Another huge red flag to watch out for is fear of abandonment. This can show up as clinginess, or needing constant reassurance, or totally panicking over the smallest change of plans. It's framed not as deep love, but as deep emotional neediness. And finally, let's get into how the guide says you should decode a potential partner's past. This part has some very specific, and again, pretty counterintuitive advice on how to read someone's relationship history, especially when it comes to divorce.
So check this out. It's a real twist. If you're dating someone who's divorced, the guide says that if they celebrate that divorce, that's actually a good sign. It suggests they managed to escape a really bad, oppressive situation. But on the flip side, someone who is still hung up on their ex, they get flagged as the one who is probably dependent, and therefore the source of the problem.
The guide also warns you to spot what it calls a quitter, someone with really low commitment tolerance. The signs to look for? Getting divorced for some vague reason like we lost the spark, or ending a really short marriage over arguments, or maybe they can't articulate a single mistake they made in past breakups. Their motto, life's too short to be unhappy, is reframed here as a massive red flag for someone who's just gonna bail the second things get hard.
And all of this brings us to the central question this whole field guide really leaves us with. It argues pretty forcefully that a lasting marriage isn't the result of compromise and working on it. Instead, it's about choosing the right person from the very beginning, all based on this principle of polarity. So, is it all just a numbers game of magnetic attraction, or is there more to the story? That's the big question to chew on.